Right guys, welcome back to another video, and today we are talking about the Charlotte Hornets and every other previous name which they have had. This is another addition to the series which I talk about NBA teams and their history. So the Charlotte Hornets were formed in 1988, so a relatively new franchise in terms of the NBA, where some teams have started in 1947, for example. So over the course of the NBA, the Charlotte Hornets actually have a win percentage of 44.2% and have 10 playoff appearances. Now I'm not going to lie, it's been a bit hard to make a interesting video about the Charlotte Hornets, being as they don't have that much history. I'm sorry, but the Charlotte Hornets as an organisation don't have the biggest history, 10 playoff appearances, and they have not won a title. It's hard to talk about them because they probably are the least successful NBA franchise of all time, but I am going to try and make it as interesting as possible, talk about some different aspects of their history, which are kind of interesting, but there's not that much to talk about, especially when we get to the key players and all of that sort of stuff. This team started off being called the Hornets, but in the 2004-05 season, they would actually change their name to the Charlotte Bobcats until 2013-2014, where they would change their name back to the Hornets. And the history of the franchise, they have only gotten to the Eastern Conference semis, and the history doesn't get much better when we get to notable players. The team hasn't had the most success, I'm just going to be honest. It's a franchise that haven't been around that long. Let's be honest, right? This was in a time where a lot of great players had already played in the league, and this team was one of the later teams to come into the NBA and be a franchise. So there isn't that much to talk about in way of history with the Charlotte Hornets, so that's why the history section is quite short. They've only ever made it to the Eastern Conference semis before, never really made it past that, so they haven't really done much in playoff competitions. They don't have a bad win percentage by any means, but it's not great for the amount of time they've been in the league. So it's a decent one, but it's not the best ever that you could talk about, let's say that. In my opinion, the most notable player that I can remember from the Charlotte Hornets history is probably Muggsy Bogues, the shortest player in NBA history, standing at 5'3", playing as a point guard, and will likely never see anyone this small in the NBA ever again. With players getting consistently bigger, and point guards even now being like 6'7", some of them, it's hard to see whether we'll see anyone 5'3" in the league again and playing like the way Muggsy used to play. When I've watched him in games, that is, when I think of the Charlotte Hornets, I think of Muggsy, because Muggsy is such a fun player to watch and talk about because of how short he was and how he could play the game against these massive guys who could literally score anything they wanted against him, and how he was a great player for the Charlotte Hornets, and he played 10 seasons for them as well, where he averaged a field goal percentage of 46.6% and 8.8 points per game and 8.8 assists as well, which is good. That is the main part of his game which he was great at, was the assisting, and his passing ability was very good for how short he was. But again, it's very impressive having that short of a guy on your team, and him being in the NBA for as long as he had. Like 10 seasons with the Hornets is a great stint for him, and I am really happy that the Hornets have at least one player who is very recognisable when you think about the Charlotte Hornets. At this point, I'm already running out of options, I'm going to be honest, so at this point we go back to players who are actually playing today, which is kind of mental that the players I'm going to be talking about now played for Boston, for example, like recently. I remember when they played for Boston. But I'm going to be talking about Kemba Walker now, who played 8 seasons for the Charlotte Hornets and averaged 19.8 points per game, 5.5 assists on a field goal percentage of 41.8%. He now plays for New York and has also played for Boston as well. Now, he is a very good player, but for him to be one of the best players in your franchise history, it's not great. I do apologise if I've missed anyone out from like the 90s or something, who played for the Hornets who was really good. The Hornets fans might be able to tell me he was really good in that period of time, but from what I've read and what I've seen, the rankings of the best Hornets players is like Kemba Walker's usually like number 1, which is a bit mad. But Kemba's a great player, but I wouldn't say he is the best player ever. Like, he shouldn't be the best player ever in your franchise, let's say that. And the final player which I wanted to talk about was Gerald Wallace, who had 7 seasons with Charlotte, was a forward and averaged 16.4 points per game and averaged 7.5 rebounds per game. Not bad, but again, you don't really want it to be the face of your franchise, let's say that, and to be the best players to ever play the game. Now, this video is going to be a lot more talking about nowadays because it's quite hard, as I have said, to talk about the Charlotte Hornets and their history because there is a very lack of history with this particular franchise. I've said this numerous times and it's hard to keep repeating myself, but I am trying to make an interesting video here. But nowadays, they finished 10th in the East and had some notable players such as LaMelo Ball, who seems to be a great player for them and a very entertaining player to watch. In my opinion, the team needed a consistent centre. Now, they had Gordon Hayward, who again played for the Celtics, who was amazing for them, and he was amazing for Boston as well. But he's just too injury prone and he can't stay fit. So I think if they can get a centre who can play most of the games, I think they'll actually be able to perform to a very high level and maybe even just about get a playoff spot. I don't think their team is that well rounded. I don't think their bench is very good. But I think that there's been a lot of failures within the Hornets in the last few seasons, that they really need a playoff run that is good and consistent, because it seems as though a lot of times with the Hornets they keep making the wrong moves and signing players onto big deals when they shouldn't do, and it seems like the Hornets don't feel like a very productive team a lot of the times. But with a star like LaMelo Ball, who was an all-star last season, obviously came in because of injuries and stuff like that, but he was still an all-star, let's get it right, he was still an all-star. And he is a great player, and if they can make him the centre of the franchise for the next, I don't know, like 5 years or 10 years or whatever, because he's a young guy who is really good and really talented. We've seen this throughout the years, and even though people were saying, oh, is he really that good? He is clearly a very good player, and we've seen this in the NBA, and he will keep being a good player, and hopefully he will improve his decision making and be a bit more of a team player. But I really like LaMelo and the team they're building around him. It's just whether the Hornets as a franchise can stay consistent and play the way that they should do and have the success which will make them not the worst franchise in NBA history. This one was quite a hard one to talk about because obviously there's not that much to talk about in a franchise that was created in 1988. But we will move, and I'm happy I've made this video because I am actually going through all of the NBA teams. If you want to see other videos like this, I think we've now done one on Atlanta, we've done one on Boston, we've done one on the Nets, we've done one on a lot of teams now at this point. So if you do like these videos, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It would be greatly appreciated by me. Thank you ever so much for watching, and yeah, thank you.